Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the editor of the Voice newspaper, Lester Holloway. Welcome to both of you. As ever, let's check out the front pages, shall we? Starting with the Metro, leading with England's Golden Girls. Their headline, Lionesses roar into the World Cup final. The Eye also featuring the Lionesses' triumph in the World Cup. The Daily Mirror describes England's football stars as the history girls. The Guardian describes how the Lionesses are surging into the World Cup final after beating Australia. Daily Mail calls on Spain to bring their red fury against England. The Daily Star has a photo of the Lionesses on its front page with the headline, Dreaming of 66. The Times describes England's footballing heroes as ferocious on their way to the final. The lead, there is the squeeze and Sunak. The FT, meanwhile, leads with the headline, Underlying inflation pressures keep the heat on the Bank of England rate setters. Well, a quick reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of the papers while you watch our guests. So let's head straight to them. Ali, why don't you kick off? I mean, some great photography here. All be, praise to the photographers and the photo editors for some of these pictures, including the Daily Mirror. A picture of joy, but there's still one crucial game to come.
Well, there is, and everyone's going to be looking forward to that game on Sunday against Spain. Let's just put it in context, Anna. This is the first time since 1966 that an England football team has been in a World Cup final. So it's a big moment. It's a big moment. And I think that they played well today. It was a 3-1 victory. I think Australia missed their chances. Sam Kerr, who's their star player, scored an absolute belter. And there were hearts in mouths with 2 further chances she missed. But they got there. And they haven't played always convincingly in this tournament. But the best teams always find a way to win, even though they're not performing brilliantly. And Serena Wiegman, to be honest with you, their manager, 38 matches, 1 defeat. What a record. What a fantastic record. Big moment on Sunday. And you get confidence, don't you, from being winners before, Euro finalists, Euro winners as well. There's that sense of calmness you get from knowing you can deliver. Lester, I don't know, how excited the nation will be come Sunday watching this game against Spain.
Well, I think the front pages themselves will help to drum up appetite, but I think that the nation is overjoyed that England has got this far and obviously willing it that much further. If the women's team do actually pick up the World Cup, I think that will be it will be a lesson to the men that they need to do a little bit better as well. So I think that there's going to be a lot of attention on Sunday, and I definitely wish them well. I think that Australia today, they had their moments, but they clearly can't be a one-woman team. But I'm very glad that some of the papers have framed this around the first time an England team has got to a World Cup final, because there has been some naysayers on social media that have actually been saying, well, actually, no, it's just the women's team. But actually, the popularity of women's football has grown exponentially over the last few years. In fact, I've got a friend who started out watching the men's game and now hardly watches the men's game at all. He just watches the women's game, which I think is actually a testament to the growing popularity of that sport.
Yeah, there's almost more space in the women's game, isn't there? So you feel like more happens in a way. The Metro has Golden Girls as Mirror, the History Girls, Golden Girls for the Metro, and the Eye, Wonder Woman as well. But what has made the difference? You mentioned the fantastic coach they've got, Serena Wiegman, who's really driven this through. But you've got FA spending money on it. Yes. You've got the clubs who've got fantastic women's teams in this country. Is there a coming together of multiple factors here?
I think there is, and I think we've come a long way since 1971 when, until then, the FA said that football was a game completely unsuitable for females. Well, look how far we've come now. They're doing better than the men, and I think that there's a lot of grit and determination here. If you look at some of the skill in the women's game, I mean, even in that game today, you actually saw Lauren Hemp make that play for Alessia Russo to score the final goal that took it over the line. And it dissected the entire defence. I mean, that level of skill is exceptional. I wish them well. They can also play in different formations, and they showed a lot of grit and determination. Just remember that before this tournament started. They lost 3 of their key players through injury and other issues. They've struggled with injury the whole way through, and they've kept it together. And Serena Wiegman has got this unflappable focus that she brings to the team. It's all very businesslike, and I'm very hopeful that they can carry this through. It'll be a huge moment for the nation if they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the finish on that final goal was exceptional as well, wasn't it? Anyway, you're right. It's a lovely distraction from the other stuff we have to talk about, which is where we're going now. So the Financial Times, underlaying inflation pressures, keep the heat on the Bank of England. Rate setters towards the end of September is the next time we'll get the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee deciding. There'll be another or more inflation figures before then. But nonetheless, although the figures look good today, people still suggesting another interest rate rises on the cards.
Yes, that's certainly what the experts are predicting. And, of course, an interest rate rise will put further squeeze on homeowners, which will also have a knock-on effect as well on rents as well in the private sector, because landlords will put up rents even more. They've been going up by around 20% in London and Manchester over the last year. So overall, it's going to add to the cost of living crisis. And yes, inflation's come down a little bit, but core inflation really hasn't moved because when we're factoring in food prices and energy prices, energy bills, then we can still see that that is ahead of where certainly public sector wages are. In fact, most private sector wages as well. There's only one sector within the private sector that's really bucked the trend, which is business and finance. So overall, the squeeze is continuing. And while certainly government and some supporters are sort of dressing this up, the slight fall in inflation as good news, I think it's actually not just about the figures. It's about how people feel and their bills at the end of the day. And those are going in the wrong direction, which sort of underlines the underlining weakness of the economy with very little growth. We're one of the lowest in the OECD, and many other structural weaknesses in the economy.
I mean, you make a good point. Just because inflation falls doesn't mean that prices aren't rising, which they are.
They still are
and
rising,
still
yes.
some, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the point is, will those prices ever come down? Will they ever return? Will they go back 20%? I mean, this is the state we're at now.
Well, I think when the Fed was talking about this being transitory, this inflationary issue, it's certainly not transitory. It's extremely sticky, and you're now seeing the highest interest rates for 15 years, 5.25% at the moment, and as we look to the next month, they may go up again. We expect them to go up again. And Lester's right. If you look at the actual inflation number coming down, yes, it's come down to 6.8%. Core inflation still close to 7%. Wages have been increasing, and Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, did warn that if people do go down the road of inflationary wage demands, which is perfectly understandable, by the way, because people are struggling out there. Of course they want to be paid decently, particularly when inflation was close to 10% only a few months ago. Then it embeds it in the system.
And those in the public sector feel that the years of austerity,
they
lost in real terms.
Absolutely,
that's
but if you look at the public sector, the nurses have got a one-off bonus as well. That's all feeding through. So you're actually probably going to see now, for the first time, average earnings rise faster than inflation for the first time in many years. But no need to worry, because Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, has said he's optimistic and it's all going to be better next year. So there you go. Well,
the trouble is, though, that we've had a wage squeeze that's lasted, I think, since 2008. We've had the longest wage squeeze, really, since the Napoleonic Wars. There's certainly the Bank of England, been talking up this idea of a wage price spiral. But you have to really question that, because inflation was high as a result of the external shocks with Ukraine.
Absolutely.
And it's coming down. Even though wages are actually going up slightly. So this idea of wage price spiral, I think, is definitely needs a lot more scrutiny rather than being taken at face value.
Well, the Times has an interview with Rishi Sunak. He's using the word "trust me" quite a lot. I noticed it yesterday and today, in fact, saying Britons will feel better off next year, he said, while vowing to tame inflation by maintaining discipline on public spending and tax. In an interview with The Times, the Prime Minister said he passionately believed that he could bring down inflation and revive economic growth. Whether he can halve it from the 10.7% that he promised at the start of the year, one wonders.
Well, he might actually achieve it. Look, Rishi Sunak is a former investment banker. As every good former investment banker will tell you, they have key performance indicators, and he set 5 of them at the beginning of the year, one of which was to halve inflation by the end of the year. Now, he may very well reach that, but it is actually about how people feel. And Les is right, it's still tough out there for a lot of people. So he's also got pressures, Rishi Sunak. He knows he's staring down the barrel of a gun at the moment. With Labour 20 points ahead in the polls, there's going to be an election probably next year, most likely. And he's under a lot of pressure from the right flank of his party to cut taxes. Now, we saw where that movie ended with Liz Truss. There's no panacea here. You can't just simply cut taxes. We've still got 2.5 trillion of public debt, 400 billion of borrowing on the back of COVID. Things are dire. You have to be very sensible. You can't just splash the cash.
Honestly,
sorry to be
you're
down.
depressing me. Let me tell you about it. He rejected calls. This is The Times again. I don't know if we can get it. I think we've got it on both. Well, we'll see if we heard it. He rejected calls by some Tory MPs to cut taxes, warning that unfunded borrowing would worsen inflation. Right now, the best thing for the country is to bring down inflation. We've heard that before. This means being disciplined on borrowing, disciplined on spending, whether that is spending on lots of things, public sector pay, or indeed unfunded tax cuts. So that's goodbye to the tax cuts for now, which we've heard again before. Anyway, I'm going to move on to the I in the absence of The Times. A-levels. Big week this week. The I is suggesting that pupils want appeals over downgraded figures, because it's the first time they're being marked properly, I suppose, isn't it? And these are people who've not really sat exams. So, you know, it's a tough time, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly there's a lot of pressure, there will be a lot of pressure in this sort of really first, you know, post-COVID A-level set of results, with more people predicted to go to university, which will inevitably lead to more appeals. But I think I'll be very interested also to you know, dig underneath some of the A-level statistics when they come out tomorrow, to actually find out what the breakdown is when it comes to you know, private, you know, fee-paying schools and state schools, because that gap widened during COVID, which was partly as a result of you know, teachers giving the marks, the grades, as opposed to it going through the normal process. Now, will that gap close? I think that's really very important. But I mean, tribute to everyone who you know, has taken their A-levels. It's a very, very stressful thing.
And missing GCSEs
do.
was the point I was making. You know, they didn't get the prep of it.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But also they've done this at a time when schools have been really squeezed as well. Teachers have been out on strike, and you know, a lot of schools have been under huge financial pressure. So the fact that you know, these young people have actually you know, come through all of this, and you know, I wish them all the best for tomorrow.
Well, so do I. And it's a really, I mean, I get butterflies in my stomach thinking about these poor kids tomorrow getting their results. I still remember it vividly myself.
Yet knowing you're expected to get worse than the last 2 years.
That's right.
It's really difficult.
It is very difficult. And also, let's bear in mind that these are the kids who went through GCSEs during COVID, which were not marked in the normal way, and therefore they had very high grade inflation in that, and that coming on the back of that. Now, they're going to have to explain this to universities and to employers who are going to have to factor all of this in. So it's not going to be easy. And about 60,000, the prediction is, 60,000 students are actually going to fall short of the grades they need to get into their top university first choice. That's going to be a scramble for clearing.
Yeah.
Again, sharp-elbowed people who are first on the phones. You've got to be quick and you've got to be sharp to get your place there. It's not going to be easy, but we do need to normalise the grades and get them back to the 2019 levels, because rampant grade inflation, I understand why it happened, and we know the algorithm and all the rest of it, and it was a really tough time for students and teachers, but we need to get to some semblance of normality again so that we have faith in the grades.
Yeah, apologies. I didn't mean to say they hadn't done GCSEs. As you say, not marked in the typical way. Stand by the clearing phone numbers. I think it's going to be a very busy time for universities. I know people who are already being called in. Anyway, lots more still to come, including mystery at the British Museum as a member of staff is sacked after treasures go missing. You You are watching the press preview with me once again, the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj, and the editor of The Voice newspaper, Lester Holloway. Very good to see you both. Let's go to The Guardian, shall we? We've already spoken about Rishi Sunak talking about inflation and trusting him on the economy. This is about the so-called pension triple lock. It's what pensioners get paid. The decision on that will come soon, and it could be up to 8%, Ali.
Well, that's right. The triple lock is basically the higher of 2.5%, average earnings, which are around 8% at the moment, and inflation, which at the beginning of this year was over 10%. Now, there's been a lot of consternation about this, division of opinion on this. A lot of people within the Tory party, because two-thirds of over 70s vote Conservative, are very keen to keep the triple lock in place. But there has been a cost of living crisis and a lot of intergenerational inequality, or at least a feeling that there's intergenerational inequality as well. So it's interesting that the Tories are sticking to this. Clearly, they want the votes. They need the votes. They're doing a core vote strategy, it appears, at the moment, but they're not really reaching out beyond that. And I think in this time, when we've got the fiscal position we have, I have a lot of sympathy for pensioners. My mother's a pensioner, for heaven's sake. I understand people have worked hard all their lives. They deserve a decent retirement. I fully get that, and I'm fully supportive. But triple lock in these times, when everyone's been suffering so much, particularly young people can't get on the housing ladder, I think this is the wrong thing to do. I think the Tories should have the guts to actually say we're going to scrap this. Given that average earnings are already 8%, go with one of the two, not the triple lock.
But that's the point, isn't it? There are no earnings for pensioners. They have no chance to go out and get a wage. And there are some very rich pensioners. There are also a lot of very poor pensioners, you know. So should there be some charity where the very rich ones can pay in and give up their state pension, you know, some other system? Going to go to the Times, if you don't mind, Lester. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, is expected to visit Britain this autumn, the paper saying, for the first time since the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, which horrified the world.
Yes, absolutely, and there were many things that the House of Saud are being accused of. The murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi is definitely one of them. But in some ways, this is not unexpected in the sense that no matter what certain regimes are accused of, when their head of state comes, we tend to roll out the red carpet, sometimes even give them a state visit. But clearly there will be a lot of dissent. As a result of that, we're going to be hearing a lot from people, dissidents who've had to flee Saudi Arabia. I think the issue of Yemen will come into play as well. That's more or less sort of died down since the United States and Joe Biden sort of pulled support effectively from Saudi Arabia to conduct that war. But it's still a major humanitarian disaster. So there's a lot that Saudi Arabia is being accused of. LGBT rights will certainly come up there as well. So these type of visits, even though on one level, at a higher level, they may be sort of beneficial to Saudi Arabia. On another level, it guarantees bad publicity.
Except Saudi Arabia is a key ally of the US and UK and has been for for decades.
It's purely about geopolitics. That's what it is. This is pure realpolitik. The fact of the matter is, Mohammed bin Salman is very ambitious. He wants $1 trillion of investment in his country to diversify away from oil. He wants Britain to be part of that. Britain wants to be to strike a trade deal with the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, which will yield $1.6 billion a year to this country. That's what this is about. They're going to look beyond the Jamal Khashoggi thing. Obviously, Mohammed bin Salman says that he had no involvement in it, but obviously we know that this journalist went into the embassy in Turkey, didn't come out alive. So anyway, that's that's there for everyone to know.
Some revolting audio.
Absolutely. So look, this is purely about realpolitik and pragmatism, and that's what the government is doing. It is putting trade ahead of ethical foreign policy. Remember how that ended for Robin Cook in 1997? Yeah. You can talk a good game. When the rubber hits the road and you meet reality, you have to do some deals with some pretty unsavoury people, including the Saudis. And we take their oil, by the way. Which we're begging for to a reduction in price. Billions of pounds we pay them for oil.
Yeah, lots to discuss anyway. Final quick story, less than a minute if you don't mind. The gem heist at the British Museum. What got nicked and how is the question now, I suppose.
Well, it's quite funny. A little while ago, I used to work for a different paper, New Nation, and we reported on the case of a Pan-African man who actually went to the British Museum and took an ancient African artefact, not to steal it, but basically, in his words, to reclaim it. on behalf of his ancestors. So an interesting story here, obviously, in the Daily Mail in relation to this very different case there. But once again, it sort of brings into focus the fact that almost everything in the British Museum has been acquired through very dodgy means.
So this is one way of decolonizing the British Museum, is it? To nick stuff.
We'll have to talk more next
I didn't quite say that, but anyway, yeah.
Lester, Ali, thank you very much indeed.